Some say it's all about 1925 and beyond. The podcast. KC 100 year celebration with Pete A. Kennedy and Marlon A. Kennedy.
Welcome again. It is the 1925 and Beyond podcast. My name is Pete Kennedy, one of your hosts. And as you know, I'm here with my co-host, Big Brother Marlon A. Kennedy. And today we have another special guest. As you know, this podcast is geared to Kingston College, KC 100-year celebration. And I went to the great college during the years of 1993 to 1995, and I played football. Played Colts 1993 and 94, last 93, 194, and in 1995 moved on to Morning Cup, and that was my journey. But I must say, today, oh my gosh, just like others, it's going to be sweet. But let me hold on. Let me turn it over to my big brother, co-host, Marlon A. Kennedy.
Thank you very much, Pete. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of 1925 and Beyond. As similar to Pete, I went to Kingston College, but as I say at the start of every podcast, I played cricket, so I was much more victorious and winning rather than the struggles that he went through playing football.
I had no struggles, let's be clear. I had no struggles. And when I went out, and I want to say this, sir, when I went and tried out for football, I met the team. So we're not going to go down there. We want to talk about Winston right now. So let's go.
It is about our guest today. So it's a pleasure to have one of our guests. As you know, KC has quite a number of chapters across the world, and in USA, that's where they have their most chapters. And today we have with us the president of the KC Old Boys Association, Tampa Chapter, Mr. Winston Stewie Stewart. Welcome, Winston.
Welcome.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Winston. So in typical fashion, there are some of you that know some of us that know you, and majority that don't. So tell us about Winston Stewie Stewart now, how you start out.
Well, first of all, before I went to KC, I had, well, I still do, have older brothers who went there.
Mm-hmm.
So I had no choice but to go to Kingston College. As a matter of fact, when I sat the common entrance, as it was known back then, you were supposed to put down two schools. Well, I put down Kingston College twice.
Another one.
Stewie, the only thing that is a man come on and say him father put KC upon it three times.
3 times.
Yes, so was fortunate to have gotten a place at Kingston College over at Melbourne Park, September 6, 1965. It's the moniker for my cohort, the 65ers. Doesn't mean that we left KC in 65, but we started in 65, which I think is the correct way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We have the 78ers, the 81ers, my brother's time, the 59ers, but that's when they actually left Kingston College. But all of us would have started at the same time. So that's the commonality. And some leave early, some went through the full thing. So that only common year amongst us is when we start.
When you started. That makes sense. That makes sense. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. And I see you representing it on your shirt, the 65ers there. All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
So that was the genesis of my tenure at Kingston College, which has not ended. It is still ongoing. So my crowning achievement at Kingston.
Before you go into that, Stewie, though, but tell us a little bit, where did you grow up?
Oh, okay. I was born at home,
Mm-hmm.
7 Nelson Road in Whitfield Town.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, it was not uncommon to have children being birthed at home with a midwifery proficiency, as they had back then. So there was no real risk in being born at home. So I was born at 7 Nelson Road in Whitfield Town. Went to Whitfield Town. Well, let me hold back on that. Went to Aunt P's school, which in that day and currently would be known as a kindergarten.
Yeah.
So that's where I spent the first few years from age 2.5 until I went to Whitfield Town Primary at the age of 5+.
Mm-hmm.
When we moved from Nelson Road to Langard Avenue, Maxfield Park Primary School was within proximity. As a matter of fact, within walking distance, of course, switch over to Maxfield Park Primary. And that's where I took the common entrance to go to KC. So that's the initial start, really, of my life. So at KC,
What was it like for you at KC? What were those years like? School, the teachers, the vibes. What was happening in 65 and you joined?
well, in 65, obviously, I knew no one except those who came from Maxfield Park Primary and Whitfield Town Primary. As it turned out, one of my friends actually ended up in the same first form, 1E, in 1965. And just so you know, Mr. Fortis was a headmaster at the time.
Okay.
Who was fondly referred to as Dogs. Had a method to his madness as far as how the first form was organized. Excuse me. So those who were at the top in terms of the common entrance examination ended up in 1A if they did French, and 1 Delta or 1D if they did Spanish. The next tier of exam results from the common entrance, those were put in 1B for French, 1C for Spanish. So that now left 1E, 1F, and 1G. The 1E, which is my form, were the baby boys, because when I went to KC, I was only 10. And 1F was some of the older boys, but by a mile, 1G was where the big boys were. Some of those boys were actually 13 and had little sprinklings of mustache and strands of beard. So you have to understand that a 2-year difference at that age level is significant.
Yes.
Right? Their growth spurts obviously would have started long before us. So they made us look like dwarfs, really. So you have to be very careful in how you interact with some of those boys, because you could end up not necessarily being impaired, but you could get bullied. And back then there were some bullying until, of course, the teachers intervened. We had a giant of a senior master. He was a deputy headmaster at the time, Mr. Crick, who was God rest his soul, from Barbados. And to us, he looked like a giant. He was well over 6 feet tall. And Melbourne Park at the time didn't have the running track that it has now. So it was all fields.
Yep, I remember that.
And the grass was so high because you were not allowed to walk across it. So every morning before the first bell rang, you could see Mr. Crick tiptoeing and looking across to see who was trying to crawl through those high grasses.
Because he was so tall.
Yeah, he was so tall, and they were arriving late. One of the things I distinctly remember in first form was that I was a monitor. And the teachers used to sit, excuse me, on a little raised platform so they could actually look down at an angle at the student body. And when the teachers were between classes and there was no one there, I had to sit in their chair to keep order. So obviously, I'm not going to be too harsh on my classmates. And being little boys, the chattering persisted for quite some time, up to the point where the headmaster at the time for Melbourne Park, Mr. Crick, or the deputy headmaster, would actually walk up, peer through the window, and said, well, I don't see any names on the board, but I hear a lot of chattering. And he did that 2 times. The third time he came up, he said, if I don't see any names written down for people talking incessantly, you're going to come to my office for a caning. Well, needless to say, I wrote till my arm almost fell off.
Everybody get right up.
Yeah, of course. I wasn't going to take caning for anyone. So those are some of the little tidbits from my time in first form. I was fortunate to have skipped from second form to third form.
Oh, wow.
At the time, Mr. Forrest was doing a little experiment, because quite a number of us, there were 38 of us, I think, that excelled beyond expectations. Some averaging, way up in the 90s. My average was 98 for all the subjects. So he decided we were probably a little bit ahead of going into second form. So he put us into 3G special. And that was really a real challenge, because, we're little boys, were in third form. The other third formers around us were already 14 and so on. So it was even worse than when we were in first form.
Yeah.
So that was a real challenge. We were allowed to take London GCE math and English in fourth form at the time. So when I got my first certificate in GCE London, I was 13 years and 6 months. Because at that time we were in fourth form and allowed to sit those exams.
What?
Yes. But by and far, my crowning achievement was being appointed head boy of the school. Because that, I think, was the beginning of my understanding of what it takes to be a teacher.
Okay.
It taught me tremendous tolerance. It taught me discipline. And it taught me empathy. Because several times I found myself teaching math and physics in third, fourth, and fifth form. And of course, not being a trained teacher, what do I do? Do I just sit there and keep order, or do I actually try to impart some knowledge that would help students to pass their exams? So it was a bit of both. You asked earlier to talk about who I would consider.
Before you move on though, Stewie, so you became head boy of KC, correct?
Yes.
What age were you when you became head boy? Because the mere fact that you skip a grade, I would say you're head boy when you're what, 15, 16?
I was 17 at the time.
17, okay.
Yeah. And this time you're probably in sixth form.
Upper six.
Yeah, man. Head boy.
Yes. So my favorite teacher, believe it or not, even though I was science driven, and I'll tell you why I was science driven after I mentioned who my favorite teacher was, and may her soul rest in peace, was Mrs. Muriel Riley. She was our English teacher. So any proficiency that I have today in English, the genesis of that goes right back to that teacher. And I could not thank her enough. And I digress a bit because it's all related though. I actually purchased a brick in her name on the Fortis Walkway Legacy Initiative. So there's a brick in Mrs. Riley's name right now on the North Street campus. But when I was in fourth form, we had a teacher by the name of Mr. Borrow, John Borrow. And for whatever reason, we had a system back then where for either there's seers that can see into the future or whatever, but he told me that I was going to do engineering because I was good at math and physics. So I had to set aside the art subject, which I thoroughly enjoyed because I had a balanced interest in literature, geography, history, Bible knowledge, and so on. And then I had to concentrate on the sciences when I got to sixth form. Maths, pure maths as 2 points, then pure maths, applied maths, physics, and chemistry in upper six. Pure maths and applied maths were separated then as 2 different subjects, or 4-point maths, as I call it at the time. So representation of the school was something that I did quite often, including a couple of times I went to sit with the Prime Minister at the time, Michael Manley.
What?
A comrade leader, Michael Manley, representing not just KC, but Kingston College, St. George's, and Alpha, and Kingston Technical, because Jamaica House could not accommodate all the students at the same time. So those were some of the activities. The Sixth Form Association was also an active engagement for myself for more than one reasons. We had some female schools involved, including St. Hugh's, Woolmer's School, Tanja. So I had what I consider to be, in my formative years, an experience which I would not trade for anything.
Yeah.
Because Kingston College has made me who I am, notwithstanding the fact I was fortunate to have gone to, a few universities, but your formative years really lay the foundation of what you will ultimately become as a man or as a woman, at least in my humble opinion.
Yep. I agree. I agree.
And that's good to hear, Stewie. So let's take us on that journey now. Now that you have spent your time at KC, what was your next move after leaving school?
Well, you mentioned the word leaving. As I said, when we were just bantering around, I have not left KC.
Yeah.
And in fact, when you get the chance, Pete A and your brother, your bigger brother, Marlon, go to the little island which is nearest the chapel. Look for my name, and you will see 1965 to infinity. So my tenure is unfinished. So until I'm gone physically to another realm and I transition, I will be linked to Kingston College for life.
And it's so funny, sir, that Dr. Terence Bent, when we spoke to him, he said every time well, not verbatim, but he's saying that every time I walk out of my door up to today, I represent Kingston College. That
Yes.
awed me. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah,
Yes.
every time I walk outside, I'm doing anything, I'm thinking, I'm representing Kingston College. And he left school 38 years ago. So
Absolutely.
here,
Absolutely. If you come to my office right now, you won't see any of my undergraduate or postgraduate certificates hung, but you'll see my Kingston College GCA level certificate. And I do that for a purpose. I do it as a reminder of where I'm
yes,
coming from,
yes,
and also as a conversation piece, because the questions are sure to come. What is Kingston College? Is it a university? What exactly is it?
Yep. It definitely does. So the thing that you have at KC that you say your name is there, what is it called? Tell us a little bit more about that.
But before, all right, but before or after you have answered that, remember, Stewie, you still not tell us yet what to do after.
After
I will.
KC,
I
yes,
will.
yes.
It is a sequence, a verbal retracing of my footsteps. 4 of us, 65ers, Norman Noble, Kenneth Gordon, Ricardo Belnavis, all of whom have nicknames, and myself, got together after we, as a collective, the 65ers, were chastised, I think is the right word, by a fellow 65er, Professor Rainford Wilkes. We meet virtually as a group, first Sunday in each month. We had one last night, as a matter of fact. And last year, I think in March, he made a statement that he didn't think that as a collective, the 65ers have lived up to expectations in terms of giving back benefits to Jamaica and Kingston College, being a group that is so highly achieved, highly accomplished, and certainly doing fairly well individually. So we took it seriously. We took his chastisement in the light in which it was intended, and we took it seriously. So the 4 of us decided what it is that we could do that would be so transformational for Kingston College, that will see benefits redound to the school perennially, not just a once-off deal. And that gave birth to the Fortis Walkway Legacy Initiative, which you can think of as a walk of fame akin to what's done out there in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And in its simplest form, we have these standard bricks, 4-inch by 8-inch, and we don't call it a purchase of a brick because the contribution for that level is $500 US. And bear in mind that price point did not originate in the United States. We actually canvassed a few old boys in Jamaica to say what would be a reasonable ask for a standard brick 4-inch by 8-inch, and $500 without communicating amongst themselves individually, they came up with $500 US. So you have that level of brick. You have a bigger paver or a granite paver, which is for head boys. I think it's 8 by 16. You get a discount. It's normally $1,000, so it went to $750. And then you have a bigger paver, also in granite, for $2,000. And then the final level is $3,000. Now the bigger ones can accommodate, like say, for instance, you 2 brothers want to buy a paver. The smaller brick might be a little bit too crunched, so you'd probably opt for the larger granite size. So if you go to the school right now, you'll see all of these things put down already for those who have made their contribution.
Okay.
And why we call it a contribution is that nobody would pay $500 to buy a brick. A few $10 at most. But what it is that we're asking is for each old boy, each member of the Fortis family, each sponsor, each person who have engaged with the school over many years or whatever, to consider making a contribution. It's a win-win. In turn, you'll get a small piece of real estate, the size of a brick or the bigger paver. And in turn, Kingston College will get the surplus revenue. So think of 100 of the smaller bricks. That's 50,000 US dollars, excluding material and labor costs. When you convert that to Jamaican dollars, you know what I'm talking about in terms of significant input of revenue, which the school surely needs. And the beauty, and I'll finish with this point, the beauty of this initiative is that it has no end date.
Yeah.
There will always be old boys graduating from KC.
Yeah.
They may not have the disposable income at that point in time, but certainly as they get older and they start to work, have their own business or whatever, they will have that disposable income. And we're asking for them to just look towards Kingston College, make that contribution, create that permanent linkage between yourself and your alma mater, and everybody wins. So that is the initiative that the four of us have coordinated and still continue to coordinate. What we're looking at now is a succession planning, because none of us are going to be here forever, but the initiative has to continue. As long as there's space on North Street where it started, there will always be the implementation of this initiative. If we exhaust the space at North Street, then we'll move over to Melbourne.
Nice.
Now, what I did is did some research. I remember we spoke, and here on screen at the KC Times,
Yes.
right, showing here the before and after.
Yes.
And a few of our colleagues who have already gone along and gotten their images and names, or plated, we would say.
Yes.
This is good. I believe that, yes, we should have our own walk of fame, and this is very, very good. Exposure to the KC Times. This is the KC Times that is out there. It's the KC Old Boy Monthly News magazine. I was featured in this magazine quite a while back, so it's not about me, but it's a nice way to get information on Kingston College and what is going on. But here you can see images, ladies and gentlemen, supporters of KC Old Boys. I'm telling you, my brother and I haven't talked about it, because when Winston shared it with me, it was brand new to me. And I said to him, but we went to the school the other day and backed up right there and didn't even see it.
Didn't see it.
Right, Marlon?
Yeah,
we went over there to purchase our shirts. I was telling him, we backed up and didn't even
right next to the parking area there across from the bookstore.
Didn't know it was right there. And I told him we walked over, purchased our shirts, etc. So had no clue that this was there. So Marlon and I will have to talk off the air, but I think this is another way of us actually supporting the school, like you say, and leaving our staplements of KC Old Boy. So that is good. Thank you so much for sharing that. And just wanted to give that little plug, because I think that is very, very good when we talk about the Kingston College Walk of Fame legacy that's out there. So
yes, and what you've just done, Pete, is also inadvertently sharing with anyone who's going to look at this production that you and Marlon are putting together. So that's another avenue of exposure, which is quite good. And again, the ultimate beneficiary is our common alma mater, which none of us are going to argue with.
That is true. So true. So true.
Yeah. So after sixth form, I was fortunate to have gotten a Jamaica engineering scholarship to UWI in Trinidad. Did civil engineering, graduated in 1976, and again was fortunate, after working 1 year at the Ministry of Works, to get a Commonwealth scholarship. And I attended University of Queensland, where I did my postgraduate training.
That's in Canada, right?
In Australia.
Australia.
Okay. Yes, all right, Stewie. All right.
And there's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it involved my own ignorance, which I'm not afraid to admit, is that a Commonwealth scholarship can actually afford you entry into countries in the British Commonwealth. So I chose Australia because of the climate. I figured it was warm enough for me to be able to study and not be trembling and shivering all the time if I'd gone to, say, Canada, which is part of the British Commonwealth. So that's why I ended up in Australia, more so because of the climate than anything else. So did my postgraduate training, earned a Master of Engineering Science degree, came back to Jamaica. Well, I spent some time in Australia because my wife at the time did veterinary medicine, and that was a 5-year course. So I worked for about three plus years in Australia. So when we returned to Jamaica, I actually had work experience, including the 1 year that I spent after I came up from Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, this was in 1981, I think it was. It was a time when Jamaica was going through some trials and tribulations in terms of shortages in every aspect of the economy and every aspect of the country. So even though I was bonded to the government of Jamaica and, of course, vis-a-vis the people of Jamaica,
Mm-hmm.
there was no money to pay me to work with the government. So I was told by the Ministry of Education I was free to go. So I worked with a small private company out of Montego Bay that had a project in Kingston. The company was Nelson O'Callaghan. Nelson was a Jamaican and Patrick O'Callaghan was an Irish engineer. So they joined together, formed this company, Nelson O'Callaghan, and there was a huge pipeline project that was going to bring water from the Castleton area into Kingston. And my responsibility was to make sure that that pipeline was properly constructed.
Wow.
In the meantime, my family, my wife and my 2 young children, had gone to the US, and I said to myself, I owe the people of Jamaica something. I'm going nowhere.
Yes.
But after a month, 2 months, 3 months, especially my firstborn, my daughter, you start to get that feeling and longing for your family.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up in the US. I went to join my family in Brooklyn at the time. And I said to myself, if I cannot give back to Jamaica physically on the ground in Jamaica, I was going to do it remotely. Hence my mission with Kingston College.
Nice.
So I have been with the KC Old Boys Association since 1982.
Whoa.
Prior to that, a couple of weeks when I came back from Trinidad in 1976, I interacted with people like Greshford Jones and others with the association, but I never really did join the Jamaica chapter. So in 1982, after about 3 months, I got a call from the legendary Foggy Burroughs, whom you guys should be aware of, Sidney Ignatius Foggy Burroughs. He called me, not sure how he got my phone, and said, how is it that I've been in the United States for well over a year? Now, bear in mind, I've only been there 3 months. But this is his idiosyncrasy. That's how he behaves. How is it I've been in the US for almost a year and I'm not reported to the association for duty? And that's why I joined the New York chapter.
Yeah.
And this was in 1982. In 1986, I became president for 8 consecutive years. Decided I wasn't going to create a dynasty in there, so I stepped down voluntarily. But then after a couple of years, 2, 3 years, they called me back saying that the association needed my leadership to get back up to the level that I had left it.
That you left it, yeah.
And of course, if somebody mentioned KC, I don't ask why, I just ask when.
Wow.
So I got back in the saddle and was there for another 7 years. So in total, my combined tenure for New York was about 15 years.
15.
For that chapter. So in 2004, my family and myself relocated to Georgia. in a place called Ball Ground, which is up in Cherokee County, just north of the city of Atlanta. And the same thing happened within short order. I was asked to study the Atlanta chapter, which I did for 1 year, and gave it back to a younger person to control and run. At that time, I switched companies, the engineering company I was working with up until that point, to take up an opportunity as a president of a small company in California. Company started by a contractor by the name of Ben C. Gerwick. You can Google Ben C. Gerwick to see what this person was capable of doing. So the company was named after him. I got the job. I was president of that company, which eventually merged with a larger company out of Denmark called COWI, C-O-W-I. And again, you can Google that company. You can put my name in there and you'll see all the biographical sketches and relationship with those two companies out on the West Coast and in Denmark. That was in 2014. Came back to the East Coast in 2017. And in that same year, well, I was coming back and forth actually between the West Coast and the East Coast of the United States. But finally in 2017, relocated family to the state of Florida, which is where I'm talking to you right now in a city called Bradenton. And that has been really the journey that I've taken. Been fortunate to have traveled to several different countries, been able to work in foreign countries, see what the cultural differences are, which I think has really given me somewhat of an advantage in terms of dealing with individuals, both technical and non-technical, with different backgrounds. And of course, the training at KC underpins all of what I just said.
And there was an important point that you raised that you sort of answered a question that I was going to ask, but I just still want to ask that question because
Sure.
you mentioned your leadership role starting out in the New York chapter, and then subsequent to that, other leadership roles. How did you hone your leadership skills? What were the leadership / management or executive positions you had whilst doing your engineering job, and how all of this was tidied or, as you say, underpinned from the foundation of being at Kingston College?
Yes, that's the genesis. And to answer your question, I had a front row seat at KC to see, for myself, how a person like Douglas Fortis, as the CEO of a school, a high school, actually operates.
Wow.
And I took a lot of cues from him. Patience is one of my virtues because not everybody has the same capabilities. So if you're going to get upset because a person has not delivered, because you're assessing that person through the prism of your own understanding and experience, it's going to create problems. So patience is one such virtue. The other thing is my leadership style is one of inclusiveness. If you come to my office right now, you will see a round table in there, as opposed to the other offices for people at my level that have rectangular or square table. Mine is round in that whoever comes to my office, and there are more than one, 2 or 3 or 4 people, when they sit at that round table, they have equal standing. None is more important than the next. And I learned that from Mr. Fortis in terms of boys coming to KC with different socioeconomic background. He treated each and every one of us like his own son, regardless of where we started out in life. So I've taken that lesson into my leadership roles with the associations and also in my private life in terms of my career. So started out with an engineering company called Woodward Clyde Consultants after I came back came to the US from Jamaica. Started at the very bottom as a staff engineer and rose to a senior vice president position. Currently, I'm with a smaller company in Florida where I'm a project executive. I decided to get out of operations because it was kind of compromising my technical skills. And mentoring is one of my prime interests, and I wasn't able to do that while being in an executive position inside an office. So I decided to do more projects where I can mentor young engineers coming up.
Nice.
Out in the field, on the ground, on the sites, and so forth.
Yes, and you have both worlds, because I have an office and you also have the field conditions, so I can interchange both. So the reason why I have a keen interest in mentoring young engineers is because of my own experience at that first company I mentioned, Woodward Clyde Consultants. There was a very senior executive at the time, and who was a modern person, just like myself. Now, figure this guy is a executive vice president of this company. We both arrive at the office around the same time, usually 6:30 and 7, between 6:30 and 7. And without fail, he would stop by my cubicle just to chit chat. So, being the curious person I am, after a few iterations of the same thing, I went to his office, and he always had the same posture. His feet was on his desk, and he was reading the newspaper. His name was James Sherrod. This guy didn't even have a PhD. He had what was called a DSc at the time. That's how brilliant he was. So I said, sir, why is it that you always stop by my office when you could have gone to your office and do more important things? So he said, Winston, sit down. And we started having a conversation. And during the conversation, he told me that he was grooming his replacement. So at the time, I said to myself, this guy isn't that brilliant. He wants to lose his job. Why would he want to replace his own position? But long after, I realized what he was saying, because if he didn't see anyone coming up through the ranks, he was going to be stuck permanently at his position. So I took that lesson for me personally, to want to mentor younger engineers to replace me. Because, if I don't have individuals with the capability, I'm going to be just moving laterally.
And it doesn't give you the opportunity for growth either. But a lot of persons just feel threatened by the younger set, so they're kind of selfish with how they do things, but they don't realize that it doesn't benefit them in the long run. And it's not good for morale within the office as well, to see that there's no opportunity to move up or replace persons at the executive level, which is what everybody wants to strive for, to move up higher.
Marlon, you said it better than I could, but you're absolutely correct. That's it. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we appreciate that, and we can see how that. You see, a lot of the times, this is my stance. I'm going to be controversial within the KC old boy space. That a lot of the times, the better the chapters, you can see the difference when a chapter is led by somebody who has that leadership experience. A lot of us want to do it, but it's really something that requires mentorship and training. There are very few, very few, rare, that you have the person that's more natural. It's sort of natural to them. The rest of us have to learn it. So it's good when you can, having gone through that, see the need to get other persons along that path as well. So really appreciate that, Winston. So we wanted to tell us now, with your current chapter in Tampa, and if you want to speak about previous time at the other chapters as well, your contribution to KINGSTON College, what any of the main projects apart from what you did with the 65ers, which is just your cohort, but from a chapter perspective, what has happened there?
Well, I'll give a joke before I start that journey south, coming from New York to Florida. It has been said that I was the president of the New York chapter, president of the Georgia chapter, current president of Tampa. My next step is to be president of the Jamaica chapter.
You keep going down.
You're going back home.
I'm back home. But that's more wishful thinking than anything else.
Yeah.
Answer your question, Marlon. What happened in New York is a story in itself
Mm.
because the chapter actually started around independence. But for a variety of reasons, it went into a 20-year dormancy, hiatus, so to speak, until Foggy Burris came up and restarted it in 1982 when he called me to the carpet and said, how come I didn't report to him? So from 1982 to the current time, the New York chapter has been a stable force within the Fortis family. It's going on 43 years now. My tenure from 1986 to 1994 was a learning experience for me at the first part of that responsibility. Learning in the sense that 1982, being 27 years old and being the president of a chapter with the treasurer being almost 50, others, much older than myself, I found that listening rather than talking was going to be my pathway to effective leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the only way you can learn is when you listen to others who have experience that you have not yet gotten.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the achievements for the New York chapter, we started a boat ride by the great Foggy Burris in 1992, I think it was. We had our first boat ride, which was a complete failure in terms of financial returns. But being true Fortis, we went back the following year with another boat ride. And the numbers went up a bit. So I eventually took the reins of that project, and we got it to the point where we then needed 2 boats. Each boat had a capacity of 525.
Wow.
So we had about 900 and change supporters who wanted to go on a boat ride. So we had to charter 2 boats. But that in itself created an issue because one boat had a younger DJ and the other boat had an older DJ. And at one point, the boat with the younger DJ was overflowing, so we couldn't put more persons on that boat. We had to put them on Sonny P's boat, who was the older guy. That did not sit well with a lot of people. Fortunately, we were able to get a bigger boat called a Dayliner. The 2 smaller boats are run by a company called Circle Line on the west coast of Manhattan. The Dayliner could hold about 1,100, almost 1,200 persons. So we chartered that bigger boat the very next year, and we had over almost 1,100 persons on board. So imagine a boat ride with 1,100 supporters. And we raked in a windfall of money for KC. In fact, Jeff Barnes, who is a radio announcer and a KC old boy, who went to school with my older brothers, actually interviewed me on the radio the following morning, wanted to know how we were able to pull such a massive crowd. And of course, my first answer, we're Fortis.
Yes, that's it.
We can do just about anything.
Is this the Barnes that is still on radio now, still around working for one of the media houses?
Yeah, Winston Barnes.
Winston Barnes.
His younger brother in Florida, who also went to KC. And then Ed Barnes, whose real name is Norman Barnes, but he goes by his radio name, Ed Barnes, is in Jamaica. And he does some sports broadcasting for Champs, etc.
Is he a KC old boy too? I don't think so.
I don't think he is, but I think he might have gone to Arden, but don't quote me on that. But definitely Winston and Jeff went to KC. So that was part of the success story in New York. Another success story was the annual reunion and awards dinner, which also had, after I took over, we decided to prepare and print a souvenir journal and sell ads to cover the cost of the journal, plus some surplus funds for KC. So when I finally left New York to head to Atlanta, that souvenir journal had gotten up to well over 125 pages. And we're making well over $30,000 in ad money. So it was quite successful. So those were the two major undertakings during my tenure, my two tenures at the New York chapter.
New York.
Yes. And then the 1 year in Georgia, I said before, was just a transitional year. Came down, tried to steady things a bit and get properly aligned a board of directors that would take the Georgia chapter to heights that wasn't there at the time. So now we're in Florida, Tampa. So I relocated to Florida with my fishing rod and my rocking chair and everything.
Your retirement mindset.
Yes.
Right? Thought I'd paid my dues as far as associations were concerned, New York and Georgia. And that worked for a while until my very good friend, a fellow 65er, and also one who was in that foursome with the Fortis Walkway Legacy Initiative, Kenneth Gordon, absolutely insisted that the Tampa chapter needed a different leadership, different side of dynamism, need to be a lot more energized. And he says he can only think of one person who would fit that bill to make it happen. And that's why I eventually got involved at that level with Tampa as the current president.
Wow. When you go to Jamaica coming up, don't let them tell about moving. Yeah.
So
Wife, go and take that one.
Yeah, Tampa is a much smaller group, smaller chapter than the New York chapter, but still with the same challenges. And the main challenge is the succession planning, which I'm a stickler for. Okay. Fortunately, we have two younger old boys on the board of directors right now. Kevin Hill, who was a former head boy of KC, and Tony Smith, who is a veteran. These are younger old boys. And I see in the two of them the future leadership of Tampa. So I'm working with them one-on-one right now, grooming them for leadership positions in the very near future.
Nice.
So any plans for the chapter for this year in support of the 100, or just your usual schedule of events for this year? What's happening for Tampa?
We have the usual schedule of events. As a matter of fact, we created history. We had a function last Saturday, the 22nd of February, and I was the MC for the program because I wanted it to run efficiently and not dig too much into people's enjoyment in terms of dancing, because bear in mind, we'll have non-KC old boys present. Mm-hmm. And I sort of told the supporters that they were actually part of history, in the sense that none of them left their homes thinking that they would actually be part of this history, which I explained to them that this year is KC's centennial year. In the US, we use centennial. Mm-hmm. And in Jamaica, we use centenary for the British vernacular. I said, can you imagine being part of history by your very presence here? Because this is the first event on the calendar of activities throughout the year celebrating KC's 100 years old. And I said, years from now when the trivia starts and somebody says, which was the first event on the calendar, you can safely say Tampa, and I was there in person. So of course that kind of, lighten up people.
Yes.
What kind of event was it, Stewie? Was that little dance part? What was it?
It was the annual reunion and awards function. Mm-hmm. And we added the additional verbiage celebrating Kingston College's centennial.
Okay.
And of course we had banners that showcase that milestone with the centenary logo.
How many attendees you had at the event?
We had just under 200. It's a smaller venue, but the ambience was befitting of the celebrations.
My gosh.
This plastic cup with a centenary logo on it was provided by two color bar old boys at the Tampa reunion last Saturday, February 22nd. 250 of these cups were provided.
Yeah.
What it says is that we might be opponents on the field, we're brothers off the field. And I wish for every school in Jamaica, whether it's Calabar, Jamaica College, KC, whatever it is, let's compete fiercely. Yes. But once the competition is done, we're Jamaicans and we're brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of respect amongst the schools, despite the the competitive nature of the respective events. But if there's one thing I've always said, and I said this all the while, is that as far as KC goes, KC Old Boy, every Jamaican either know a KC Old Boy through relation, somebody friend, somebody in-law, everybody in KC. And then the number one response is that when somebody asks you, which high school you go? And you say, I want high school in Jamaica.
Yeah,
and
everybody knows.
It's a KC man, this
It's a KC man.
That is so true. And I want to add another piece of trivia, if I may. I think I mentioned it to PTA before, but I mentioned it again at the reunion last Saturday, in that one of the final official functions of the late Michael Manley, comrade leader and former Prime Minister, was the Kingston College Old Boys Association function in New York. And at the breakfast that morning, he admitted to us, not in jest, but in total seriousness, that if Jamaica had the spirit of Kingston College, 90% of the problems that the island experiences would have gone away. Why? Because of how KC operate as a brotherhood. We don't see anybody in the family as an adversary to go after and do some negative things. We help each other. We never pass a fellow old boy in need and not try to help. So imagine if you extrapolate that across Jamaica, where we would be today. That was from Michael Manley.
Stewie, you're the second old boy to say that to us. I don't remember who we interviewed, whether it was Audley or Wayne
Dr. Fraser.
They mentioned that same story. Story about Michael Manley at one of our KC event. And at that time.
But even at my in Florida here, as much as the guys joke around when we finish playing ball, I sat them on and say, boy, KC thing different. They come back to the serious gesture and say, if a lot of people would follow how KC and the alumni and the boys run things, just like you say, Sir Stewie, we would actually solve a lot of problems. So the school and to everyone out there, let's continue the spirit, because the one thing I know in Jamaica, when it's good, they always talk about it and make it look bad. And I tell people that when they think of your talents, when you chat too much, they say, go on boy, you love chat, you can go on. But you turn out to be a speaker. When you do this, so those are the little things that you did well that they talk about, and that's the thing, them just for come up and say, KC, continue to do a wonderful work, and how can we collaborate? And you just heard it. We got 250 plastic cups, logoed purple, with the actual 100 celebration donated by Calabar. So I tell people when I come to the States, that's when I realize it's a collaboration rather than a competition. So, in Jamaica, let's spread it. And Marlon and I do that in the schools. We tell the guys, yes, go out there and compete fiercely. But when you see them on the road, it's still your brother. When you see them on the road, it's still your fellow men. And I was raised that way where, we don't want to talk to nobody else if I'm not KC. Until I come to the States and my first manager was a Calabar man. Then home I go to get up and walk out of the work. So, those are the things that, as you said, knowledge-wise, we're trying to share and let people know that let's do this work together for the betterhood of the island and the people.
You guys are doing a tremendous service to the Fortis family. And by the Fortis family, everyone who's associated with Kingston College. So, Marlon, getting back to your question, what it is that we have planned as a chapter in Tampa for the centennial? Well, we have the usual fundraising events, which focuses on academic scholarships for boys at the school. We do plan to have a dedicated activity or two specifically for the centennial celebrations. And all of those receipts, receivables, surplus revenue will go towards whatever activities the steering committee has planned beyond just the celebration between the church service and the gala on the 16th of April.
All right. So thank you for that, Winston. It's really a pleasure. It's great to hear the stories and all of that, and your journey as well. Your leadership journey is very important. That is important. and to see, what the difference leadership makes, no matter what, no matter the environment, the state, wherever you are around the world. Leadership, good and sound leadership works. In true fashion for the podcast, we want you to end on the note of one, wishing KINGSTON College happy 100, and two, leaving a positive message for those out there. And also, with regards to the chapter, any social media handler and information on the chapter, just drop a word here, and we'll also follow that up with the relevant notes for the podcast. Go ahead, Stewie.
Yes, on the 16th of April, which is the official birthing of KINGSTON College, today I want to take this opportunity of wishing my beloved alma mater happy, happy, happy birthday. Milestone of this magnitude doesn't come every day, comes every 100 years. And since none of us are going to be around, this is extremely special. Happy birthday, KINGSTON College. What I would like to leave with us to ponder on is doing volunteer work, obviously, as the name suggests, is voluntary. But with volunteerism comes responsibility. So if you're going to volunteer, do it because you want to do it, not because you want to get recognized. And do it with such zest and such focus that it can only succeed. And I would encourage anyone who wants to have a well-rounded life to do some volunteer work, and especially for your alma mater, KINGSTON College, just like how you two brothers are doing right now, which I commend you tremendously, because this can only be good for KINGSTON College.
Only, right?
That's the plan. Yes. That's the plan. That's the plan.
Yep.
Go ahead, Pete.
Wow, my gosh. I mean, I am, these stories, they just get even sweeter and sweeter. I tell people, Mr. Stewart, that by the time we're finished with our 100 interviews, I won't have any cheese. My cheese will permanently be like, that's how sweet they are. But I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it from the man himself. He said verbatim, KINGSTON College made me the person I am. The man who's got the Commonwealth Scholarship and went to Australia. When it comes to anything revolving KC, it is not ask me why, but ask me when. You've heard it from the man himself, 1965 when he joined, up to today, which is 60 years later, inspired by the great Douglas Fortis and the school. And I must make common comparison. Similar KC old boys say, when they step out of their homes today, the purple and white they represent. My gosh, I must say again, KC old boy, Tampa president, thank you for your time. Thank you for the story. And thank you for sharing the KC Legacy Walk, which is we're going to say, please, touch base, get it. You see, we showed it, we'll show it again. But please, if you have the opportunity, I will be spreading that across, because I can tell you, when you said it to me, I said, but sir, it's the first time hearing about this. And I tell you, we just pulled up at the school last week and did not know that thing was behind us. Right? So I am going to, when I go back, I'm going to take pictures and share it all over the place, because I can tell you a lot of people don't know, and we're going to make sure that we fill up that entire block of KC old boys. And like I said, we'll have to find wall and some other pavement for fine, because what? We're going to need more space. And like you say, this cannot end, because the school will continue on, and we'll have more and more and more old boys to come. Sir Stewie, I want to end with the greatest motto that ever was created. And it goes like this. Join us. Fortis. Cadere.
Non-Potest.
The brave may fall. Never yield.
Never
yield.
yield.
Again, from 1925 and beyond podcast, we say thank you. We love you. And I get to learn this motto. Fortis then. Fortis now. Fortis
forever.
All
right.
Wow, good. Cheers. We'll see you on the next podcast.
Yes. Thanks again, guys. Appreciate it. Fortis.
You're welcome, sir.